Tonight I'm on the best dance floor in town. The club is called Sides. You can wear any colour you like as long as it's black. Not because you're down, because it's a mood. This is alternative and it's a groove. But what's alternative?
Alternative is usually used by outside people. We wouldn't consider ourselves alternative as such. We consider ourselves to be doing our own thing, and that we like to dance, we like to maybe dress in a certain fashion. But to us, it's not alternative, it's just being ourselves. Primarily, it's a dance club, which I opened about a year ago to fill a need in Dublin. Well, I thought there was a need there anyway, for a genuine dance club.
And by dance, you mean where people, they don't come to meet each other, they just come to...
They don't come to meet each other, they don't come for the drink, they come to dance. So that's why we try to provide the best DJs in the city with a good choice of dance music. We have 3 different DJs, so you do get a variance for each night, but primarily it's dance music they play.
And obviously you got an idea for this somewhere. Where did you get the idea from?
Well, it was like going to New York, for it was one of the few places you could go to dance. So coming back here was a bit of a disappointment. There were only 1 or 2 places you could actually go to dance in. So I think there was a market here for it.
I play music that isn't dictated specifically by the pop charts. We delve into the indies charts, the dance charts, black charts, anything.
And for different clubs, presumably you pick different music. For instance, for Sides, what kind of music do you play?
There's absolutely no boundaries whatsoever. Absolutely none. From country and western to rock and roll to funk to punk. A lot of people come here, they're into dancing. You know, they don't have to dance to something they know. They just want to get up and dance.
Our door policy, we wouldn't discriminate on age. I suppose it's style, you could say, at the door. You know, you could have an 18-year-old who'd look good, who we'd let in, where another club would say, no, you're too young. But it's the same with any age group, you know. Sex or age doesn't matter.
And if you show up here in a 3-piece suit, your chances are slim, are they?
They're slimmer than usual, yeah. Because we feel there's something fishy about you. And usually there is, you know.
About 2 years ago, you couldn't say, like, once 11:30 goes, you couldn't have a few drinks or go out to dance. But it's changed now with the arrival of places like Sides and Risks and the Waterfront. But it's nothing like what goes on in London or Berlin, but you're talking about very big cities. And Dublin's a very small city, so I wouldn't really compare them.
The first club in Dublin with like proper mixing and turntables and everything else was Majesty's on Dame Street. And it was called the Rock Box, run by Tony Christie. This was in 1986. Hip hop and a little bit of early house, scratch mixing. Then in 1988, there was a club called Club Voodoo and Soul on Ice was another one. That's 88 and 89 in McGonagall's. And that's the first proper clubs. People were queuing around the fucking block. Jay Strongman played, Jazzy B from Soul to Soul, Norman J, Dave Durrell, Cole Cut, everybody. Me and Oisin Lunny used to warm up for them. And it was proper club nights. It was house. At the start, the standard thing at these clubs is you'd walk in and at the beginning of the night it'd be loaded like rare groove, they called it at the time. It's just 70s funk. So it'd be loaded rare groove and then maybe into a little Latin hip hop, proper up front hip hop imports. And then for the last hour, 2 hours of the night, it was just straight up house music. Proper house music. Like way before. At the time, Sides was like, Sides was not even on the map. Sides was unheard of. Nobody went to Sides. It was McGonagall's, and that's how it went down.
Oh, this was the main dance floor right here, and just over here, the DJ box was. There was a flight of stairs went up, and you went up into the DJ box. But all this basically, this was the dance floor. The sound system was brilliant. It was like I think up here there was about a 10k rig up here. Like, and it used to used to thump, you know, 700, 800 people in the place. You couldn't move. It was like a sweatbox. Like the condensation used to be dropping off the ceiling, basically, you know. So when I was DJing, you used to basically have to wear shorts, like with the heat in the place, you know. This is it. This is the place, you know. The holy grail of dance music in Ireland, you know. This is it. This is it.
Next exclusive here, DLR 106 FM, brand new one from SL2 on XL Recordings. We'd like to tell you about this following information. Pro Rave 2000 presents Rave of Destiny on Friday the 20th of March from 9 p.m. until late, the full late bar. Buses will leave from outside the Custom House Quay between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. for a secret venue 1 hour's drive from Dublin city centre. Buses from Greystones and surrounding areas leave from the usual places. Attractions to include, these are all confirmed and booked, live on stage, Dublin-based techno outfit Bumble. The DJs for the night, direct from London, DJs Matthew B and MC Master P. Banana Boys, they're from Dublin. Easy Rider, Latin Wolf, Heads in the House plus guests. There's a 10k sub-bass sound system plus all the usual effects. No illegal substances will be tolerated. Buses return at 6 a.m. the following morning. There's a limited capacity. The tickets are priced at £10.50. The tickets are in advance only due to the limited capacity of the venue. Tickets are available from Abbey Disc in the Abbey Mall and also Ruffin Records in the Temple Bar area. That's a Rave of Destiny happening on Friday, 20th of March, 9 until late.
I came back from London, it was 1990, and it was, the dance music scene was really kicking off in England. It was really, it was nearly mature at that stage. It was 2 years into it. They had their raves, the clubs were doing really well, and so I actually worked in the cloakroom and sides for about 2 or 3 months when I came back. Because we knew friends, and at that time it was Liam Fitz. It was more or less still gay, you know. There was a mix coming into it. That was in 1990. And then one night I was asked to play at a sort of warehouse party, and it's just down the end of Thomas Street. There was an old building, and luckily enough for me, a lot of people that were going to sides came up to it. And for that one night, it was a Friday night, I think, and sides was more or less empty. And the owners sort of looked into why it was empty, and they realised that, well, they realised that cloakroom guy had sort of was playing at a warehouse party, and that he had robbed all their punters. So they sacked me, but they offered me a job as one of their DJs on a Friday night in sides, and that's how I started.
So we went to the Rock Garden. We said, look, just give us a Monday night. Like, we hadn't a clue. They said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They were the nights they were giving them out. And they couldn't make money on the doors. And we just said Monday. And then we opened, and we had a queue. And the first night, I remember, I was like, oh. Everybody was so naive that they'd listen to everything, and they were really open to things. Whereas now people are very set in what they like, and they're not open to just going out and going with an eclectic night of different things, and be it house or be it funk, you know.
The college authorities, they kind of knew what was going on. I mean, it was obvious if you'd walked into the bar on a Friday night that it was a full-on rave going on. I mean, at the time, especially around October and all that sort of stuff, you have people coming in literally with bags full of magic mushrooms, just handing them out for free. So I got quite sloppy in the bar, you can well imagine. And then you'd have the big raves then in the restaurant. I mean, put one on. It was Paul Davis was Lens officer at the time, and he put on the Urban Cookie Collective. You know, crap! I've got the key. I've got the secret. They were just so bad. Louis, who was the sound and production manager in the restaurant, he just went up and just fucked them off the stage. That was it. That was the end of it. Back on with the DJs then. I mean, I guess that's what people wanted. They didn't want to hear that sort of kind of nonsense.
All the usual razzmatazz of an opening night in what has become Dublin's trendiest area, Temple Bar. The club is in what was the kitchen of the Clarence Hotel, hence the name. There are 2 bars to quench even the greatest thirst of Dublin's late-night clubbers. Seating in cubicles and restaurant-like layouts. And to work up that thirst, the obligatory dance floor and state-of-the-art disco equipment. Here is where the young and the beautiful will mingle, though perhaps not too young.
It's aimed at a kind of, not an older crowd, but certainly one of those sort of people that are out their teenage years and looking for something a wee bit more sophisticated than normal.
Last night, Cupid was shooting his Valentine bow to try to keep the sub-zero temperatures at bay, while Mockness imitators made the grand entrance before the real things arrived. First, Adam Clayton going into the wrong door, then Larry Mullen with a flamethrower, followed by The Edge in almost Beatles costume, and finally Bono and White Alley.
Who are you hoping will come to the club? People who would be cool enough to leave me alone, you know what I mean? And the sort of people that you just like to hang out with anyway.
I can remember the very start of club and rave culture in Dublin, because there must have been less than 20 of us. And again, we were dispersed all over the city, like Liam's from Santry, we're from Ballybrack. There's 2 from Ballybrack, 3 from Santry, 4 from Crumlin, you know. And then each week, it seemed to grow every week. It seemed to grow because they'd go back to their little neighbourhoods and say, oh man, this new club, and we'd go back to ours. And then suddenly loads of people from Ballybrack were coming into sides, loads of people from Donaghmede, loads of people from Santry, loads of people from Sheriff Street, you know. It exploded then, you know. Sides had got to a point when it became quite scary, and we were very idealistic, and in the side of club culture that was very hippy dippy, like it was all one love, and that's what it was then, you know. It was all about, Acid House was primarily about one love. It was like a hippie movement with more drugs probably, but it was very friendly. That was the whole point of these clubs. But then I think sides towards the end did get a little heavy, and the crowd was rougher. There started to be fights. People were getting territorial over who should sell drugs, who shouldn't sell drugs, and that never happened before. So we set up the Beat Club primarily as a music thing, a music outlet for 100 of our friends. And I think our timing must have been really right, because everyone else wanted a break from sides. So the Temple of Sound was actually the same guy who owned the venue that the Beat Club was in. The Beat Club was in the back of the Harp in Timpan Alley, hadn't been used for 10 years. We reopened it, filled it. He went, whoa, happy days. So he invested in the Temple of Sound. That was a guy called Jerry Harrington. Very gas character, but like nothing to do with music whatsoever. Hated music, hated people, but just loved money. So the Temple of Sound, he gave me and Billy Scurry full rein to do what we want to do. He just said, just do whatever you're doing with the B Club, bring them people here. He provided a safe space, professional environment, proper bouncers, and they had this, I don't know what the stupid idea came from, but they gave out platters of fresh fruit in the middle of the night and all, some weird stuff that it was his idea. But it gave us a vehicle to, without risking our own money, which we didn't really have at the time, we could bring in guests on a very regular basis. Like we guests from Scott Harkis, Derek May, people from America, you know, that was out of our reach. All the UK guys, Weatherall, Justin Robertson, Rocky and Diesel, all them, we could bring in on a weekly basis now. So it really opened up the potential. And I think, I'd say that was the tipping point for Dublin clubbing.
took drugs. I just didn't, and I got into it after listening to the music, and I just thought everybody was really friendly in the clubs. My mate's dad used to own the Temple of Sound, so I used to get into it when I was like 15. Because once I got into the music, I discovered that my mate in class who I sat next to, his dad owned the Temple of Sound, and I was like, Rob, can you get your dad to let us into the club? He was like, yeah, no problem. I made 6 of his lads from my class go in one night. He brought us in. Ken Kane was the manager. Was like, you're not getting in. Who are you? And I was like, we're on the guest list. And he was like, lads, you're not getting in. It's a joke. Get out now. Get on the phone. Ring Mr. Coffee. Mr. Coffee comes down. He's like, Ken, make sure these guys get in anytime they want to. Buy them a beer when they get in. Like 15 or something, you know. So I was in the club and I was like, everybody's so nice and so friendly, and I'd just be at the decks looking at the DJs all night. Weatherall, Green Velvet, Richie Houghton, Claude Young, you know, all these guys. Philip the House Cat when he was like really skinny and toned, you know what I mean? And all the legends.
The scene very definitely moved overground at the beginning of what I call the Septic Tigers, so between 1993 and 1995, 96. And it had to do with a number of things. It had to do with the commodification of recreational drugs. They're more widespread. They're more widespread consumption, and also they're more widespread acceptance. The drinks industry started sniffing around, and you can see that playing out through how the drinks companies sponsor club flyers in that period. Club flyers start to get they're better designed. There are designers using, club promoters using photographers and illustrators. I'm thinking of somebody like Eamon Doyle, who used a lot of his original photography of North Inner City Dublin and then dropped them into some of his flyers that Niall Sweeney designed. So if you want to actually, I think you can really see it becoming overground. You can see its overground reach just by reading flyers of the period. And then, of course, it plays out in the general design of clubs. Clubs having money to actually spend on short-term installations, clubs being able to just simply ramp up their sound, put in Function 1 sound systems, just better services overall. And you know what? There's always going to be a little bit of elitism about, you know, the underground, the overground. But if and I have great memories of going out on a Sunday or Saturday night in Dublin in the early 80s and cycling up South Georgia Street with my fellow, going home to Rathmines, and you could guarantee at 4 o'clock on a Saturday night, the only people you'd see out in Dublin, apart from utility workers, were people who you'd been dancing with or you'd scoped earlier in the night at some venue around town, because there's so few of them. And that was magic and that was great, but actually, you know what? There's nothing wrong in sharing all that love and fabulousness and widening the net.
I think, you know, certainly in the early days of dance, even in Dublin with someone like Sides, it was, you know, pretty rough and ready. And it was all about the music and the vibe. But suddenly, you know, dance got taken over by, you know, opinion makers and the Sunday supplements. And all of a sudden, the Z-list models were thinking, oh, we'll go to the kitchen. And you got the clipboard Nazis who'd stand outside. And their job was not to, they were called greeters, but they're actually there to make it seem elitist. I can remember people walking around very sadly with wristbands from a certain club or a stamp on their arm, like a sort of badge of honour. We got into the pod, we got into the kitchen. But if there were 6 of you, even if you weren't drunk, you could turn up, be quite respectable, and there'd always, like, one of you couldn't get in. And it was actually done to create that demand, you know, to make people go, wow, I got in. I think I knew the game was up. I was in the kitchen one night and Naomi Campbell came in with her minders, who insisted on a load of us who'd, like, taken over an area moving from Miss Campbell. And we sort of said, like, no, we're sitting here, and the next thing, the bouncers come across, the management come across, saying, you have to move. And I thought this was going to be about, you know, a democratic thing, having a good night out, and now you've got sort of subsections. And you had the VIP room coming in, and VVIP, and you know, it just suddenly stopped being about, you know, going out, getting hammered, walking around, hugging everybody.
There was nothing happening, and people had walked. I'd left college in the 80s. There were no jobs. Loads of my associates or people I would have gone to college with emigrated straight away. People travelled for a couple of years and came back, and there was really nothing happening. Jobs they were sort of few and far between, but there was lots of people with lots of ideas, and I think those times when there is literally nothing to do out there are when some of the best things happen. And so, that spirit of doing something by yourself, and you kind of see it reflected in various times, including now when, there are groups of people at a loose end that just get together and do something just for the hell of it, not necessarily for any other reason. And it was very much that kind of feeling at the time, which made it much more satisfying, much more enjoyable. There was nobody really directing it or telling you what to do. It was there to just, as a pastime, as something that just kind of allowed you to be a little bit more creative than you probably would be in your day-to-day job. So great memories of those days, and really great people, and people who weren't kind of caught up in anything that would make your little small contribution to it complicated. They just let you do your own thing, and I think that's where you get really great stuff, and I think that's why there's a nostalgia about it, and that's why it's a worthy thing that people want to look back on and kind of wonder about or find out more about.
We'd heard about Shaft. People hear about it. It was one of these clubs that were rumoured, and we were kind of afraid to go down because it was obviously predominantly gay, and we were straight guys, and Pod had opened, and we had started going to Pod, and even Pod was a difficult place to get into, but everyone that went there said you have to go to Shaft, and Shaft was the real after hours club, and we went there once or twice and couldn't get in. Michael O'Connor on the door, and it was a closed door event. You knocked, and they had to, you could kind of vet, so the only way to get in was via friends. But I was lucky, as I said, I had a pirate radio show going, and I got noticed. There was people ringing me, and I got a couple of gigs in town, in some gay clubs and some gay bars. I played in places like the George, and out of that, I got to meet people going to the Shaft. They brought me down, and I handed in one of the tapes that I had been making on Club FM, and was offered a Sunday night in Shaft. I think it was around 1992 when I got my first paid gig in Shaft for £50 at the time for a Sunday night. And Shaft used to open at 11 and go to probably 6 or 7 in the morning. So you'd be carrying 2 or 3 boxes of vinyl, and typically me bringing 8 boxes of vinyl, just to plan it out in case it went any certain direction. Got into it. I was lucky. I fell into it, to a really lucky place at that time, and I was a young straight DJ playing in a predominantly gay club, and it opened so many doors for me because of what Shaft signified as an underground club. It signified a certain sound and a certain direction in music, which was quite stylish.
The Dublin clubbing scene of the 90s was a blissful experience, an absolutely blissful experience, and what nobody really expected from the scene at the time was that what had gone before, if you like, what led up to that through the 70s, 80s, pre the 90s, was that the music scene was quite fractious insofar as that if you were into reggae two-tone skin scene, or if you were into punk or post-punk, or if you were rock or goth, all those scenes seemed to, like the mods and rockers, you were naturally against as well as being for. So I think, for instance, for myself anyway, I kind of tired of that layer of aggression always being there around music, and that when the dance scene happened, it was an incredibly uniting experience for everyone. I don't think anybody really foresaw that, but I do recall very strongly being at a night down in Sackville Place on the north side, and thinking I would never normally come here, and knowing that I should be terrified, but I wasn't at all. And as I say, it was group hugs all around. It was an incredible experience, and you would pour out, and the same 30-40 people that you'd never met before would all be huddled in some corner of an early house trying to keep the party going and pushing on through. And it was amazing, and everyone's saying the same thing, is that if we'd met each other a year before, you probably would have been, tearing lumps out of each other. So yeah, it was beautiful for that, and also that it was, you know, it crossed every side of the divide. So similarly, you would have folk from D4, D8, D1, D2. It didn't matter where you were from. I think there's a cracking line from Ian Brown who said it's not where you're from that counts, it's where you're at, and that was very much the attitude at the time.
We moved into the league illegal with 12-10. It was just a time and a place and a moment, because loads of people came together, like some art students with Tom Lynn doing our visuals, and obviously all my friends that had come to clubs with me. And you know, there was a lull in the likes of Red Box and Tivoli. They had closed down, so there was just a gap there for this club pub kind of thing, you know. And like that, it just felt like a community within a small independent buzz. So yeah, it blew up for about a year and a half, and then I suppose, like anything, nearly became a victim of its own success, because like anything, everything gets successful and gets popular, and then you start drawing on the wrong type of people, and the cool crowd that were originally making the party stop going because they don't really like the blow-ins or the general public kind of infringing on their buzz, you know.
Saturday night is party night, at least for those of us who work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. But staff in the retail and service sectors who work through the conventional weekend say they have nowhere to go when their weekends.
My night out is a Sunday, and there's not very many places you can go to. Everywhere's shut.
Sunday would be my day out, really, more than anything else. Sundays and Mondays, the less busy shifts for the waiter, for the restaurants. There's nowhere really to go.
A few bars, you know, tend to be busy on a Sunday night with the industry crowd. There's nowhere to go then once they're closed. So it's a bit of a problem for people in our industry.
In the past year in Dublin alone, several nightclubs that used to open late on Sundays now close completely for the night, even though 1 a.m. Sunday closing laws have not been changed in years.
25 years ago, ironically enough, I was working in venues that stayed open until 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. The law is quite specific about what time places can actually open until. Unfortunately, there's a sustained campaign by the police to actually close a lot of venues because they weren't actually fulfilling their obligations under Sunday night closing.
Those in the industry say Garda resolve to crack down on alcohol-related crime is spoiling a good night out. But from the Gardaí's perspective, it's been an effective operation. 80% of assaults causing harm are drink-related, and the number of assaults decreased by 21% in 2003. But that still doesn't explain why Sunday night should have earlier closing than every other night of the week.
What I would like to see happen is Sunday night would be the same as Saturday and Friday and Thursday, basically, because there is a culture out there that are being affected. What I think what the law is basically saying at the moment, that if you don't work 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, you're in the wrong job, and you don't have the right to socialise the same as everybody else.
The Minister for Justice is expected to publish a new intoxicating liquor bill later this year, but at the moment there's no indication that opening hours will be changed.